and gentlemen, grab your pen and paper and write down 3 things you're grateful for. This is OD on Life. Come get high with us.
Hey everybody, welcome to OD on Life. Today I have a special guest and good friend of mine, Liberty Elias Miller, is on the show. Hey Liberty, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For those of you who don't know anything about Liberty yet, she is sort of a Renaissance woman. She's involved with music, ocean conservation. She travels the world quite on a regular basis. And like she and I talk about a lot, she is a doer, not a talker. So I'm happy to have Liberty on the show, and it's been a while actually since we've even talked. So it'll be good to catch up and to let you guys know what Liberty's up to and how you can apply that to your life. Because as you know, the goal of each episode of OD on Life is to give you a gem that you can actually apply to your life. We're not just here to be entertaining. We want to actually help you take steps forward and change your life. So anyway, Liberty, welcome to OD on Life, and I'm happy to be talking with you.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you as well. It has been a while.
Yeah, it has. And we can start in a number of places, but I saw something. I was just reading over your Facebook wall to see kind of what you've been up to. Mm-hmm. And I saw you shared an article, and I think it was, I don't remember the exact name of the article, but you highlighted number 4, courage is overrated.
Yeah, it was an article about travel.
Yeah, and I went and read number 4 and what it had to say, but I was wondering why that stuck out to you and why you wanted, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's interesting because since I started traveling and really living life the way I want to, which is a bit, unconventional, it seems like I always have people telling me that they are living vicariously through me. Mm-hmm. And they're always saying things like, "You're so brave. I wish I could do that. I would never have the courage to do that." And it seems interesting to me that they say that because I believe that anyone can change their life. If they want to live a certain way, they have the power to do it. And, as you know, I had a completely different life only 5 years ago and decided to radically change my life and live the way I wanted to. And so when people say that they don't have the courage to live the way I do, it just always kind of strikes me as interesting because they do have the courage. They just maybe don't realize it yet.
Right. And, I think the word courage and brave and these kind of things, I think some people look at it differently than I do, because actually it was in a Game of Thrones episode, I think, and in all these movies like Braveheart and stuff, they talk about you can't be brave unless you have fear.
Right.
That's the whole definition of it, is you overcome your fear. It's not that you don't have any. I mean, if you're not scared to jump off a building, you're just crazy.
Right.
There's nothing brave about that. But, if you're standing, maybe you're getting ready to jump off a cliff into a lake or something, almost everybody I know is at least a little bit scared, even if they've done it before. Like there's a cliff here I jump off of once in a while, and it's probably, 40 feet high or something. And I've done it, at least a dozen times, but every time I get nervous again. But it's just good practice to get over that. Like you just recently went to Australia, and were there other places on that trip as well?
Yeah, I went to New Zealand as well.
And I know you've traveled a lot, but did you get even a little bit nervous about any part of that trip?
Oh, absolutely. I'm nervous before every trip because I travel alone.
Yeah.
And as a female solo traveler, it's kind of a nerve-wracking thing. And solo travel anyway is nerve-wracking. You're going to an entirely different place. You're leaving what's comfortable. You're leaving the people that you love and the place that you're familiar with, and getting on a plane and going to a different part of the world. It's always nerve-wracking, but the rewards are worth it.
Right. So if you're one of those people that tells Liberty how impressed you are with how brave she is, how fearless she is, or whatever, and you're listening to this, there's the peek behind the curtain. She gets scared too. And I get nervous before every one of these podcast episodes. I mean, I think no matter how many I do it, maybe I'll get less nervous, but I feel the same feeling that I used to feel before sports games when I was in high school. I just I have this nervous energy and I pace around, and I know it'll probably be just fine, but I still feel that every time. And you can kind of look at that a couple different ways. You can let it make you nervous, and some people choke under that kind of pressure, or you can choose to think of it as, this is exciting. It's not, I don't have to feel this anxiety or dread about it. It's exciting. It's something new. They say growth happens outside your comfort zone, right? So, yeah. And
that's absolutely right.
And what's
I
your
think
alternative? Do nothing and grow old and say, I wish I would have gone to New Zealand when I was, 30?
Exactly. And how you handle that anxiety, you kind of touched on that. How you handle that anxiety is what makes you who you are,
Yeah.
and you realize how strong you really are once you step outside of your comfort bubble and you do those things that you've always dreamed of doing, but maybe never had the courage to do.
Right. I don't remember exactly who they were interviewing. I think it was some of the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe back in, I think it was 2005 when they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I might have the year wrong, but I believe it was Jerome Bettis and Hines Ward. These guys are like standout players, potentially maybe Hall of Fame guys. And I think it was after the Super Bowl they were talking about, when you get interviewed before the Super Bowl, you just say, oh, no, I'm a professional. It's just another game. I can handle it. But it's totally false. You are shaking in your boots. It's the Super Bowl. You've been dreaming about this since you were 6 years old, but you just go out there and do it anyway. And I think people that get to that level, they're always taking steps forward, and I'm sure their first day in the NFL was just like that, and their first day playing for a college team was just like that, and they probably felt that way before high school games. And so don't be fooled. I know when we see these people on the news, or you hear stories about these people, you just think they're something different than the average person, and they just have always been confident and always knew it was going to work and all that, and I just don't think it's true. So it's really valuable to realize that.
Absolutely.
So to shift gears a little bit, I had your website up, I shut it down, but you, like I said, are a Renaissance woman, right? You're involved with booking bands, putting on music festivals, different ocean conservation organizations like Sea Shepherd, which a lot of people might be familiar with from the show Whale Wars. You were a guide up in Alaska this summer. You're going to do the same sort of thing in the San Juan Islands next summer.
Right.
You've been involved in all these different things. So what leads you to try out so many different things? And do you consider yourself sort of restless? Do you need change, or what makes you tick?
Yeah, gosh, that's exactly it. I've always been pretty restless, even as a child. I remember feeling like I just wanted so passionately to do all these things and see all these places, but I was a kid. I dreamed about when I was an adult and I would conquer the world. And now as an adult, I definitely am restless. That wanderlust just takes over and really kind of dictates my life. And I feel like I can't be in one place for too long. And, and there's all these things that I love. There's not really one thing that I'm passionate about. I just love life and everything about it. And so I just want to try things and do things. And I really feel like if you want to do something, you should do it. And if you crash and burn, then at least you tried, instead of spending the rest of your life wondering what if.
Yeah.
So, and you and I are very similar. We always have all these projects going on. And it's just a great way to meet people, get out there and network and discover what you truly are passionate about, because how are you going to know unless you try all these different things that interest you?
Right. And, I think some people lose sight of the fact, and to some it seems morbid, but I think about it, bring it up quite a bit, is
right.
We all have a limited amount of time here. And not only is it limited, but we don't know what the limit is. It could be next week. It could be tomorrow. Maybe we have 80 years left. Who knows? Maybe life extension technology. Maybe we have 200 years left. But we just don't know. And so to not do things, to me, and I'm not the most adventurous person in the world, but I do get out there and do things I want to do, because you don't know if you wait a year, that could have been half of the rest of your life. You just don't know. So it's a gamble to not go do things. It's
Absolutely. And that's what really drives me. What you mentioned is that we don't know how much time we have left. And I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, and it makes me realize how fragile and fleeting life really is, and it's over before you know it. So I want to live as much as I can with the time that I have.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. You said when you were a kid you were restless, but when you're a kid you kind of have everybody else telling you what time to go to bed and you're going to school today, or
Right.
you get a week, to go on to summer camp or whatever it is. So when was there a moment where you started doing the things you'd always dreamed about? Was it, after you graduated high school, or when did it all start for you?
It actually was not until I was 29.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yep.
See, I didn't even know that, and we're pretty close friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't until I was 29. And I mean, I don't want to say that I wasted all of those years
Right.
not doing what I really wanted to do, because I did learn so many valuable lessons during those years. But, after high school, I went to college, and then I got a job, and then I got married, and life just kind of has a way of happening
Yeah.
if you let it. And when I was 29, I had a full-time photography career and had been married for many years. And it just hit me that I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. I wanted to be out there, with Sea Shepherd on that boat, fighting for whales and seeing the world and meeting people. And that wasn't what my husband wanted to do. So I had to make the choice of, was I going to go or was I going to stay?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I decided to go, and it was so difficult, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I sacrificed a lot, but like I said before, the rewards of those sacrifices have just blown me away. It's been such a great life these past 5 years.
Yeah, so I would think at the time you were thinking about making that decision, one of most people's biggest fears is that fear of the unknown, right? If you stay, you know what you're getting. You're a photographer, you're married, you live in where were you living? Was it Oregon or?
No, I was here in Bellingham,
okay.
Washington.
Yeah, so that's all very comfortable and it's known and it feels safe and all of that. And if you make this change, who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, it could go a million different directions, but I've heard a lot of people say when they make a big decision like that, at the time there are a lot of emotions involved and they feel uncertain about it. Am I doing the right thing? Will it work out? But then they say hindsight is 20/20, right? I've heard several people say a year or 2 or 3 years after that, it's really clear to them that was the right call. And once they're not emotionally entangled in the decision, it's so clear.
Right, and for me, I think it was, maybe 6 months after I knew I had made the right decision. And like I said, it was a huge decision for me, and it not only affected me, but it affected my husband as well.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurt him. He's a good man. And, of course, there were things that made it very easy to stay. He has a good job and made a lot of money, so there was that comfort. But those material possessions weren't what I wanted. Yet I knew that leaving, I would be completely on my own. And it's been hard, I tell you what. I mean, these past years, I had to move back in with my parents at one point, and that's something I thought I would never do.
Right.
It's been hard. It's been really hard. But, even 6 months after I walked out that door, I knew that I had made the right choice.
Yeah.
And not only for me, but for him as well. He's happier now, too.
Good.
So,
that's great.
yeah.
And now I'm curious to go back a little bit. You said you went to college, you got married. You got a degree, or what did you study in college?
Photojournalism.
Okay. So you actually used your degree, unlike a lot of people.
I did.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
And you said you got married, you were 29 and you had been married for a while, so you got married fairly young?
Yeah, I was 23, I believe.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so fast forward, you made the big change, and that initially was Sea Shepherd, is that right?
It was, yes.
And how did you get interested in that?
Well, I actually took a marine naturalist class down in Friday Harbor, which is on the islands near Seattle. And that is where Sea Shepherd is headquartered. So I started meeting Sea Shepherd people, and they realized how dedicated and passionate I was, and they needed a photographer in Japan, where the cove is. There's a dolphin slaughter that happens there. And they offered the position to me. And I took
Wow.
it. I didn't even think twice about it. I took it and I walked away from everything and I moved to Japan.
Wow. How long were you there in Friday Harbor before they offered you that job?
Well, I was just taking a class there. I was living in Bellingham, so I was going down every weekend to Friday Harbor for about 6 weeks.
Wow, so that was quick.
Yeah, very quick.
6 weekends, and you get offered a job to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And
Yeah,
so you
well,
just
it was a volunteer position.
okay.
So, and they were looking for volunteers. I mean, they're always looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
And how did you knew about Sea Shepherd before you went and took this class?
Oh gosh, yeah, I used to watch Whale Wars.
Yeah, that's how I knew about it too.
Yeah.
Yep. If you guys haven't seen that show, and actually you mentioned The Cove, if you haven't seen the documentary called The Cove, check that out. That's where Liberty was. What's the name of that town again?
It's called Taiji.
Taiji, right.
Yep.
And there's this big roundup and slaughter that goes on every year, I think. And then also, besides just the slaughter, they take the dolphins that are going to places like SeaWorld or the other dolphin kind of entertainment places, right?
Right.
And those are the ones that I guess, are the cutest probably?
Exactly. Yeah, they select the good-looking dolphins and then they slaughter the rest.
Right. So, anyway, if you haven't seen that, no doubt, I mean, this is called OD on Life, right? But that is a downer. Watching that movie, there's no doubt most people are affected by that. But it's real and it goes on, and raising awareness about things like that is obviously one of the ways to start to end it. But what was that like being there? I mean, emotionally.
Oh, it was the hardest experience of my life. And on top of that, I was going through a divorce. So,
Wow.
it still haunts me. And people ask all the time what it was like, and there's really no words for it. Watching the documentary is one thing, but actually being there and seeing dolphins be slaughtered and hearing them scream as they're dying, it affects you. How could it not affect you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's admirable to go through that and make that sacrifice to help raise awareness to, further the cause to end that. Yeah, go check out The Cove. It's a tough one to watch, but it's a very worthy cause. And I know that it was one of the most interesting things to me. I believe it was in The Cove, or I might have been watching something on YouTube, but I think in The Cove they go to Tokyo, right? And they show people footage and tell them what's going on.
They do, yes.
And the people have no idea, right?
Absolutely,
and
right.
These are the same people who are, eating the dolphin meat, and they don't even know that they're supporting this.
Right,
So,
and even people in the next town over, which is about 15 minutes away, even they have no idea.
right. So, yeah, shining a light on it definitely can't hurt the situation.
Right.
So you've done other things related to ocean conservation, and so what else have you done in that arena?
Oh, geez. Well, I currently volunteer with Rick O'Berry, who is the man that stars in the film The Cove.
Yeah.
And he has an organization called Dolphin Project, and it focuses on the Cove. I've also, I've volunteered with the Blackfish in Amsterdam. I've started my own marine conservation group here in Bellingham, and we put on a music festival a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
I
how you
remember
and I
that.
met.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was at the old flea market that I used to have, and Liberty lined up, I think it was 10 bands, is that right?
10 bands, yep.
Yeah, that was impressive. And everywhere from, I think they were from Seattle, Portland, and of course the Bellingham area where the flea market was,
Right.
as a fundraiser. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
The Blackfish. So there's the movie called Blackfish, right? But what's the Blackfish?
The Blackfish is just a grassroots organization, and they're based out of Amsterdam. They are ex-Sea Shepherd people that have branched out on their own. So you can check them out on Facebook or online. And yeah, entirely different from the new documentary Blackfish. It's
Right.
two separate things.
And Blackfish, that's somehow related to orcas, is that right? Specifically?
Yes, Blackfish is the name for an orca. It's what the
Right.
natives used to call an orca. And that focuses on orca captivity. It's a fantastic film, and a lot of people that are in it are from this area, the Pacific Northwest, and they used to be ex-dolphin trainers and whale trainers. So, but it focuses on Tilikum. He's a whale that has killed 4 people in captivity.
Yes, right.
So
that's another movie you should check out. Another one that's tough to watch, but important information. And you know, like we said at the beginning here, the goal of this podcast is to give things to people that they can actually apply to their life. And here is a very, very simple one. If you want to see whales and dolphins, that's awesome. They're really cool to watch, but you can do it in the wild. And it's more fun anyway. I mean, I would rather go out on a boat in the San Juan Islands or, you know, California or wherever you are, the Mediterranean, and get a cruise in while watching these things in their natural environment rather than, you know, go through a gate and watch them while I'm sitting in a stadium. But just like the people in Tokyo don't realize what they're doing when they're ordering dolphin meat, a lot of people don't realize what they're doing when they're going to places like SeaWorld and all the rest of them. You're supporting that, you know, the dolphins that get pulled out of the cove and thrown on an airplane and put in a tank for the rest of their life. You're supporting that whether you realize it or not.
Right. And a great way to see the orcas here in Puget Sound in the San Juan Islands is you can come kayaking with me this summer because I'm a kayak guide, and we go out and check out the whales. And
yeah, if you want to feel small, go out in a kayak and look at orcas, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty life-changing experience. I mean, it's unlike anything else. When you're in a tiny kayak and a massive whale comes up to you, it's the most beautiful experience. So I work for a kayaking company called San Juan Kayak Expeditions out of Friday Harbor. You can check them out online and come kayaking with me.
That's awesome. And it's if you don't know anything about the San Juan Islands too, check out, you know, go on Google and look at some pictures and things because it's just a beautiful place. I mean, the kayaking would be amazing, but just the sightseeing over there, hanging out on the beach, the sunsets, it's just a beautiful. I grew up pretty much just east of the San Juan Islands, and it's a gorgeous part of the world if you've never been there. Out of all the places I've been, I really haven't found anywhere that tops it, especially in the summer when it's warm enough to, you know, mess around and it's light until 10 o'clock at night. It's just gorgeous. So definitely, go kayaking with Liberty. You definitely won't regret it. So, Blackfish, Sea Shepherd. What was the name one more time of your current company?
San Juan Kayak Expeditions out of Friday Harbor, Washington.
And if they Google that, they'll find the website, I'm sure.
They will, yeah. It's sanjuankayak.com.
Cool. Great. If I'm over that way this summer, I'd love to do that myself.
Oh, yeah, you should definitely come with me. It'd be great.
Yeah. So, back to music. How did you get involved in music in the beginning and why?
You know, music it's the one thing that was there for me as a child, which I know sounds funny, but I think a lot of people will relate to that statement. You know, as a kid or, you know, an adolescent, when you just feel alone and like nobody understands you, and music was the one thing that was there for me, always. And, you know, it was when I got old enough and started going to concerts, and it was my way of being me and getting out there and meeting other people like me. Right. And it was something that my brother and I shared. He sang in a band and was a big music lover, and it was something that he and I really shared and really bonded over. And he died when I was 16, and so I just kind of continued on with the music, and I really feel when I'm at a concert or just, you know, lying in the dark with my headphones on, I just really feel connected to my brother. So music has always been a really important part of my life.
That's really cool. That's another thing I didn't know about you. And so now, well, when you first got involved, actually, it was with what, booking bands, or how did you get involved? Were you running the merchandise table, or?
Well, the way it happened was, you know, I just started going to shows and meeting bands. So I was just going as a spectator, as a fan, and started meeting the bands. I mean, as you know, I'm not very shy. I can talk to anybody.
Right.
So yeah, started meeting the bands and they all realized that I do photography. So I started bringing my cameras to shows, got involved with a lot of the local bands, just taking pictures for them, and then started working merch tables. And yeah, it just kind of evolved into what it is now. And now I pretty much do whatever a band needs. So
Which is a lot, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a great journey.
Yeah, I know. I got involved with that just a little bit when I had that flea market that we mentioned, and you and I coordinated a lot on that, bringing in local talent and setting up shows in the evening, and we had the crazy basement parties a couple times, and, and
awesome.
that music festival. Which, looking back on it, I can't believe nobody called the cops. Can you?
I know, right?
I mean, I can't remember, but I don't. Did we have any kind of permit for that?
No,
No, we didn't. We had 10 bands, and some of them were like, I don't know if they would call themselves metal, but they were close to it, right? I mean, hard rock.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
I mean like Minor Planes, they don't have a singer, they're all instrumental and they're pretty crazy. They're awesome though.
It blows my mind. And then afterwards, we had the cops come over to visit us several times for like Brer Rabbit.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And if actually they changed their name to Wild Rabbit, I saw.
Yes,
And
they
if you
did.
guys, let's plug some of the local bands because we met some really great musicians while we were there working together in Bellingham. And Wild Rabbit is one of them. I listen to them on Spotify on my phone here in Thailand. And how would you describe? They call themselves Americana Folk Stomp, right?
Yeah, yeah. And they are just oh yeah, how do you describe them? I mean,
I
they're
would say
kind of-
like the most. I mean, definitely, if you know what Americana is, it's definitely that, and most people would recognize folk more. So they're
Right.
definitely folky,
Right.
but it's the most like toe tappingest music. Like you can't stand there and be still. It's pretty much impossible.
Right, and it's so great because the band members on stage, they all stomp on the stage in unison to create the bass, and it's
Yeah.
just the coolest thing ever. And they're so in unison with one another, and I don't know how they do it.
They are
They
really
blow
good.
my mind. Every
And-
time I see them, they blow my mind.
Most of their songs, it's kind of like their thing. They start off kind of mellow, and then at some point, it's almost like, in dubstep where there's the drop.
Right.
They do that with folk.
They
They
do.
start off
It's-
real mellow, and then all of a sudden it just gets like super energetic.
Right.
I remember you were talking about they all stomp, and most of the people watching stomp. I remember my leg, like one leg would get tired every time I watched them. And it's that weird little muscle in front of your shin bone that raises your toe up.
Yeah.
I remember all of a sudden I'd be like, God, my leg is so tired, I've been hanging out with Brer Rabbit too much, which is, again, Wild Rabbit now.
Right.
Why did they change their name? Was there somebody else with the name or something?
I don't know. I'm just kind of assuming that it's because everybody was spelling Brer wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So I
probably
really don't know. I haven't talked with Miranda about that.
Yeah. Right. I haven't talked to those guys in a long time. And while we're plugging bands, there are a couple other people I want to mention who, one is Sam Chu. And
Yeah.
he's in a band. He's in more than one band, I think, at least the last I checked. But he was in a band called the Von Vettas. I personally I like singer-songwriter stuff a lot. So his solo stuff, to me, is amazing. And it's Sam Chu, Chue. And you can just Google it and you'll find his stuff. That is one talented guy.
Oh,
And-
right. His singer-songwriter stuff, it makes you want to cry
I
in
know.
such a good way, though.
And some of it he wrote when he was still in high school.
Oh, yeah.
It just
Yeah.
does not seem like a high school kid wrote that.
Right.
Yeah, definitely check him out. And then the Von Vettas, the way I describe them to people, and you don't come across this a lot, is they sound to me, a lot of their songs, like they should be on the Dazed and Confused soundtrack.
Yeah.
You just don't hear that sound a whole lot. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got Fane Yazi, which he's an amazing guitarist, and just a really fun band. So the Von Vettas, check them out.
Yeah, they really make you want to move. You can't
Yeah.
sit still with that one.
I know, and it's spelled just like it sounds, the Von Vettas. Anyway, if you're a music fan, check them out. And then the one that I can't forget to mention is Jenna Freeman.
Oh, right,
It's
right.
just she sounds like an angel, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, her voice, it's one of the most incredible voices I've ever heard. And that includes anything I've ever heard on the radio or any of that. And I think it's jennafreemanmusic.com. So, Anyway, they're the Bellingham people I want to brag about. Do you want to brag about anybody?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them around here. I mean, because we have Western Washington University, and we're a pretty liberal town, and so all of these amazing kids just come here and just pour this music from their souls. One that I would really like to mention is Garrett Hendricks.
Oh,
He
yeah.
has a band called Garrett and the Sheriffs.
Yep.
And they're just fantastic. They play a lot in Seattle now. So if you're ever down that way, be sure you check them out. Garrett just, yeah, he's one of those that's going to go places.
Good. So they're catching on, it sounds like, huh?
Yeah, they are. And especially his singer-songwriter stuff.
Good.
So he's doing
I can't
good.
wait till a couple of these bands are huge and I can be like, they got started at the flea market.
Yep.
Yep. And I'm sure there's a million other towns like Bellingham that music is crazy. There are so many really talented people that most people have never heard of, that are just trying to work their way up, or it's a hobby for them. But anyway,
Right.
Go check out some local music wherever you are, and throw something in the tip jar too.
There you go. Yeah. Support local music.
Yeah. So to rewind a little bit, you mentioned in there when we were talking about music that it helps you feel connected with your brother, who he died at what age?
He died on his 21st birthday back in 1997.
And you're welcome to go into as much detail as you want or none at all, but this leads to a big win in your life recently because it involved a gun.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, as you know, I'm very open about my brother's death. He was murdered by 3 of his friends over drugs on his 21st birthday, and, was missing for 2 months before he was found. They found his body just not long before Christmas. And, I was 16 years old, and it's hard enough to be a 16-year-old girl. To throw that in there, and in a small town where everybody knows everyone else.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, I mean, needless to say, it was traumatic. And it was very difficult for me to deal with for many, many years. But, like you said, hindsight, now I look back on it, and that was really the turning point in my life. And that's what changed me and made me who I am. And I love the person I am, so kind of feel like, maybe his death wasn't for nothing.
Right. What has worked for you? Because I'm sure somebody out there listening is going through, grief and trying to find a way to deal with it. Is there anything that you could recommend to people?
I think it's all just in what type of person you are. And back then when that happened, I come from a small town that has a really big drug issue, and I went the route of drugs. It was kind of the only option for me at the time because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't know who to turn to or how to handle this. I mean, how does anybody know how to handle murder?
Yeah.
So, there were many dark years for me. And, thankfully my parents, they had just lost one child, and there was no way in hell they were going to lose a second one. So
Right.
I really credit my parents with, being the reason that I'm still alive. They fought for me, and I really can't thank them enough. And, I put them through hell and they stayed right by my side. And then I realized later in life, after I, came out of the drug phase, and I realized I didn't want to be a victim. And I didn't want my brother's death to be a negative thing, even though it always really kind of will be a negative. I also wanted to take as much good from it as I could. And so I started just realizing how fortunate I am, and I started really kind of chasing life and living the way I wanted to, and trying to uplift other people and encourage other people to be good and to be thankful for what they have, because really, even if your life is bad, there's people out there that are praying for what you have.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, it's been a long road, but now I see the good things in my brother's death, and I really try to keep it positive and be a positive person.
Yeah. Something you mentioned in there is you get to choose your response, right? And
Right.
there's, a formula that sometimes seems a little cheesy, but I've heard a lot of people say that E plus R equals O. So you have the event and then you have your response to it. And that is what determines the outcome. So you can't control the E, the event, right? There's a lot of things that happen to us that we can't anticipate, and we might not have chosen for that to happen, but the response is your choice. And the way I think of it is it's like a sailboat. You don't control the wind, but you get to adjust the sails, and you're the one holding the rudder and all of that. So if you take responsibility for what you do control, it gives you're empowered, to control your life as much as you can. So
Right.
big high five, big overseas high five to you for choosing to look at it that way. I mean, that's
Thank
a
you.
big deal.
Thanks.
And that gets us to, so one of the results of that experience, right, was I know that you had a really, almost maybe close to paralyzing fear of guns.
Yeah, yeah, and you know that because we've talked a lot about it. I was raised on a ranch. I was raised around guns. I used to do a lot of shooting when I was a kid, and then my brother died, and I developed really a debilitating fear, and it was to the point where I was having nightmares every single night. My mom took me to doctor after doctor, and we tried pills, we tried hypnotherapy, we tried everything. But these nightmares just would not go away, and eventually I gave up trying to get rid of the nightmares. I just accepted them as a part of my life. And I was tired all the time, and there were times when it would be worse than others, but when it was bad, I would go for weeks with just almost like a zombie, not really even being able to function because I could not stop thinking about these nightmares. And it was horrible. And those lasted almost 20 years. 17 years I had those horrid nightmares. And as you know, when I would be around people that were talking about guns, I would get really nervous.
Yeah.
Even if there wasn't a gun in the room, just the talk of guns would kind of make me start getting shaky and sweaty. And it really was debilitating. It dictated my life.
I remember seeing that because at the flea market, I have guns back in the U.S., and once in a while I'd be buying something from somebody or showing somebody how to do something or whatever, and you would be around, and I wouldn't always remember that, and then you would kind of just get really tense and almost like start turning white. But the reason I bring all this up is I saw that change over the time that we were hanging out in Bellingham. And
Right.
the time that sticks out in my mind is we had a constitutional rights rally. So we had people outside at the flea market speaking about different, rights issues. And one of the groups there was the open carry group from our area. And so what that means is, they carry firearms openly. So it's on their hip where you can see it. It's not concealed carry like most people do. So, they walk around with a pistol on their side. And that day I had one on my side. And I remember you were able to control it that day. And I'm not sure exactly where you were in your transition of getting more comfortable, but where were you that day? How did you feel that day?
Oh, I was terrified, but I remember you had asked me to come.
Yeah.
And so I did, because you're my friend and I care about you, and this was something that you are passionate about, and you had always supported everything that I was passionate about. And so I felt that I owed that to you to go and support you and support what you care about. And it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
But I did it. So, yeah, it was a rough day, but I wanted to be there to support you.
Well, sorry to put you through that, and I'm
No,
impressed that you
that's-
were able to do it. It's just like we talked about earlier, you felt the fear, you did it anyway, you were there. And I wonder, had you been around a bunch of responsible people openly wearing firearms since you were 16? It's
No.
not. It's not a
No.
typical environment.
Right. Yes and no. My family, they all have guns. My sister is a cop and her husband is a cop, so they both carry,
Yeah.
and usually openly. But I live 10 hours away from my family, so I don't see them very often.
Right.
But there were times, when I would see one of them in uniform, and they would obviously have their gun. And yeah, it was disturbing for me. It was difficult, but it was also something that, my family embraces guns, and I always did as well. But after my brother died, I went the opposite direction. And so I didn't want to burden my family with my fear. And it wasn't my place to ask them to not carry around me, because it was my issue and they shouldn't have to change their life when I decide to come into town for a visit.
Right. Interesting. So fast forward a little bit after that rally that we had, you got a job up in Alaska, and one of the requirements was to carry a shotgun, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so tell us about that. How did that go?
I kind of think of it as the best and worst day of my life. So I had gotten hired as a guide on a boat in Alaska, a small cruise boat. And, as you know, that's my dream job, living on a boat and taking people hiking and kayaking. It was definitely a dream job. And I quit the photography career that I had at a company called Grizzly Industrial. I'd been there for many years, and I quit that job to accept the position in Alaska. And then they told me I was going to have to carry a shotgun. So it was either face my fear, once and for all, or give up this amazing position.
Yeah.
And at the time during the gun training, I had just met the crew, the captain, the owner of the company. I didn't know these people.
Yep.
And, the murder of my brother is not really a conversation starter that you tell someone you've just met.
You're right.
So none of them knew about my brother, and none of them knew at the time about my fear of guns. And so it was something that I just had to keep inside and deal with it. And we went to the gun range, and we did a half a day of a classroom session with an instructor. And the whole time I was just sick with fear. I mean, literally sick with fear. My stomach was upset. I was shaking and sweating, and it was horrible. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. And the time came when we went out to the range, and we each had to let go 5 rounds. And I got up there, and I was so weak with fear that I could hardly hold the gun.
And what was it, a shotgun?
It was a shotgun. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is not a small gun either. I mean, this is going right to one of the biggest, loudest, scariest guns.
Yeah, exactly. In front of a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
And so when it was my turn to get up there and shoot, I kind of whispered to the instructor how nervous I was. And he was great. He said, I'll stay right here behind you. Just pop off your 5 rounds and it'll be done. And I did it. And it was, I don't even know how to explain it. It was at the same time so insanely liberating and so insanely terrifying. And I remember afterwards when we left the range, I called my mother and broke down sobbing, which is something that pretty much never happens. It takes a lot to make me cry. But I called my mom crying and told her what I had just done. And she, of course, was so proud of me. And I was proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be.
That fear was so severe. And there had been times in the past when I had attempted to go to shooting ranges and face that fear, and I couldn't do it. And here I was in front of a bunch of strangers, and my job was on the line, my livelihood was on the line, and I did it. And since then, I have not had a single nightmare, and that's been almost a year ago.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, I know you weren't shooting on probably a daily basis or anything, but did you shoot after that a few times, or?
I did. Yeah, we went back to the range in Alaska a couple times. And those times it was just for fun. And it was great. We would take soda cans and empty boxes, and it was just the crew members on their time off. We would all go and just have fun. And it was fun. For me, it went back to when I was a kid, and we would set up empty laundry detergent bottles and shoot them, and it was fun. And it went back to that for me. So that was great.
Were there literally none of the nerves that you had in that first experience, or just less?
Oh, there definitely was some. I mean, just being around a loaded gun, I think, will always make me nervous.
Yeah.
But so yes, that always was there, and I think for the rest of my life I will have that insane respect for a gun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that fear was still there, that nervousness was still there, but the fun part of it was definitely more prevalent.
Right. And I think that's healthy for anybody to be nervous enough to pay attention and have respect for the power that's in your hands. I always, say I don't want to go shooting with somebody that's just giggling and smiling too much. You know what I mean? Get that person away from me.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You remember Miguel, right?
I do, of course.
He was, I think at the time, 14 or maybe 15, and I took him out shooting for the first time. Of course, his mom said it was fine and everything.
Right.
But I remember it was just, I was impressed because we brought a .22 rifle, which is about the most mellow thing you can possibly shoot. It's not as loud. It barely has any recoil at all. It's generally just, it's like one step above a BB gun.
Right.
It can still obviously hurt people, but it doesn't scare people as much as a first gun to shoot. So I brought that, and then I had a .357 Magnum pistol, which looks like something out of a Clint Eastwood movie. I think it had an 8-inch barrel. I mean, it's just way overkill, this crazy pistol. I mean, it's very loud. It has a lot of recoil. It just kind of looks scary. But I took them out. We took both guns because I think I'd only shot that pistol maybe once. And mostly I wanted to shoot it, and I thought Miguel would probably shoot this .22 rifle. And I told him, though, we pulled up to this logging road, and we just got lucky. There was a television with the screen not broken right next to the logging road, which is like a miracle if you go somewhere that anybody else has ever shot. There's never a TV with an intact screen, right? But it was like Miguel's lucky day, and I said, "Oh, Miguel, look at this. There's a TV. That's like the most fun thing you can possibly shoot." And I said, "It's totally up to you." I said, "Most people would start with the .22 rifle. That's most people's first gun that they'll shoot. And if you want, we can do that. On the other hand, if you want, you can shoot this pistol, and you'll have a heck of a story. Your first gun is a .357 Magnum revolver." And he kind of thought about it for a second and said, "Yeah, I'll shoot the pistol." Okay. And so we got about, I don't know, 25 or 30 feet away from this TV probably. And I remember I showed him how to line up the sight and everything, and I only put one round in the gun so that, he doesn't start jumping up and down and waving it around after his first shot. A lot of people get excited after their first shot, so I like to start people off with only one round in the gun, because a lot of times they want to look and, "Did you see what I did?" and they're waving the gun around. Anyway, so I gave him one round, and I said, "Okay, there's the TV," showed him how to stand and everything, and he popped off the first shot and came up probably like 8 feet short of the TV, and this like fountain of dirt goes shooting up in the air, and it was just this horrendously loud noise, and the look on his face, his eyes were like saucers, he's like, "Oh my God, that was crazy. That was so loud, and so much dirt." And all. Anyway, but at the same time, he had that smile on his face. Like it's fun, and I'm sure there are people right now listening to us in Europe and stuff, and they're, "Oh, these people are insane. What's with these Americans and their guns?" But hey, don't knock it till you try it. If you've, I'm sure it's probably like driving a race car or something. You wonder, why would somebody do that? And then you do it and you go, "Oh, I get it." So Miguel had a lot of fun, entirely missed the TV on his first shot. I mean, he missed the TV by almost as far as he was away from it, right? And then his second shot, he blew a hole in that TV that you could put your fist through, and he's just like, oh my God, the look on his face, he's having so much fun. Anyway, but that's really impressive that you just did that. I mean, and that you, not only that you got over that fear, but that you were able to, nobody even knew what you were getting over. These strangers weren't even aware.
Right, and that was the hard part because, you saw me previously, how I reacted around guns or even just talking about guns. And so, once I got to know my crewmates and told them about my brother and, I think the story didn't have the same impact on somebody that didn't see how I was before.
Yeah.
Because, it's one thing to just say, oh, I had this fear of guns and now I don't. Whereas to see me in that fear, that debilitating fear, shaking and, you had to, I guess, really see it to understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when you walked into the flea market the day of that rally, I think I was standing behind the counter, and I don't know if I can't remember if I had mentioned to you that I was planning on open carrying that day. And I think I was honestly just waiting to see if anybody else was doing it. I didn't want to be the only guy doing it, just come across like some crazy guy. But and that's a whole nother story. It's funny. It used to be, you need a permit in Washington State to conceal a gun. You don't need a permit to wear it openly. And now people tend to think that if somebody has a gun open on them, other than a cop, or some kind of forest ranger or something like that, other than those people, I think that guy's weird. That guy's a lunatic. He's some kind of gun nut. It used to be that the guy hiding the gun was the weird one, right? Like, why are you hiding it? What, are you going to go rob a bank? Why do you want to hide it? It used to be normal to have it open. Right. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. And I don't consider myself a gun nut, by the way, but I don't know if I want to get into the Constitution right now, but the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is the right to bear arms, and it's not because of deer hunting and home invasions. That's not why it's there. Anyway, I remember when you walked in and I had that gun on me openly. I think that kind of surprised you, and you just kind of had this tense look on your face, and it was very obvious that you had a lot of fear there. So anyway, high five again for getting over that.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, you talked about quitting Grizzly. I wonder how big of a change was that for you? And you'd already been through a big life change before. Did that help you with the second time around?
Well, yeah. It did. It did. I was working at Grizzly when I made the choice to leave my husband, and I had been there for several years, and it's a hard place to work. There's a lot of rules. And it was hard to quit that first time because it's a good job and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so making the decision to quit and move to Japan was difficult. It was very difficult. And then I was overseas for several years, and when I moved back to Bellingham, Grizzly rehired me as their photographer. And the second go-round was actually really difficult for me because I had tasted freedom.
Yeah.
And then there I was back in that dark, cold studio in the back of the warehouse photographing machines. And I knew what was on the other side of that wall. I knew what was out there waiting for me. And so it was harder for me to stay and have that normal 9-to-5 job. And so when the time came to leave, when I accepted the position in Alaska, it was a very easy decision for me.
Okay.
And it was because I knew what I was walking away from, and I knew what I was walking towards.
Cool. Yeah, and the last time you made a big change, it wasn't the end of the world. It worked out. Like you said, within 6 months, you said, man, I made the right call. I would think that would give you the confidence the second time around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that my big change about a year ago was I sold that flea market that we've been talking about and moved over here to Chiang Mai, Thailand. And, I wanted to move to Thailand about 10 years ago. My first trip, I think it was '04 or '05, and I came over to a place called Koh Samui and Koh Phangan, which are islands in the Gulf of Thailand. And ever since, it was like you said, when I went back, and mostly I was selling real estate, coaching middle school football and stuff, which it wasn't bad, but I knew that at the same time, people were hanging out on this island that I just loved, and I wanted to figure out a way to make that happen. And, it took 10 years before I actually moved here. I visited just about every year, or every time I could, and loved it every time and kept thinking about coming back here, but it didn't happen overnight for me. So if anybody's out there thinking about it and, scared to do it or whatever, and you've been thinking about it for a couple of years, that was me too. And looking back on it, I'm really glad that I just made that leap. And actually, here's a tip I can tell people too. Probably the biggest influencer on me finally making that leap and deciding to sell the flea market and move was I was in a mastermind group, and it was actually just two of us. It was myself and my friend Eric, and we would talk weekly, and we would tell each other what we were working on, what we wanted to get done before the next meeting, and then we would hold each other accountable. And I talked with him, and brainstormed with him. He was the guy I bounced the idea off of. I'd like to move. I have this flea market. It's paying my bills. I don't have the money coming in online that I would actually need to live on over in Thailand. But I think if I didn't have all these other things taking up my time, that I could probably make that happen more quickly. And it was really clear to him. He's like, you just need to do it. And I said, okay, I'm going to talk to this guy that I think will probably buy the flea market from me. He was the manager, helping me work there already. I said, I'm going to offer it to him before next week. And so I talked to him. I think it was the next day, and he just said, yeah, I want to buy it. So, there it was a week later, and I finally did it. After 10 years of, reasons why it didn't quite make sense, or just basically fear of the unknown, having that mastermind, which was just one person in this case, pushed me and made me actually take action. So who you hang out with and who you talk with is a huge deal. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Having another doer to hold you accountable, it's huge. I think that's why you and I accomplished so much when you were living here in Bellingham, because we're both doers and we held each other accountable.
I think you're right. Things like the music festival or some of those basement concerts, I mean, we just kind of started and kind of looked at each other. What do you think? Should we do it? Should we try this? Okay, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Okay, we're both in it together. I'll blame it. If it goes bad, I'll blame it on you and you blame it on me, right? And if you're listening and you're not familiar with what a mastermind group is, there's tons of information out there about them. My favorite source of information is Jack Canfield wrote a book called The Success Principles. And in the book, he talks about his method of running a mastermind group. And that's what I started with, and that's what's worked well for me. So if you just Google The Success Principles, Jack Canfield, Mastermind Group, something like that, I'm sure you'll find it. There's a PDF on exactly how to do it, and it just works great. Ideally, usually it's 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 6 people, and you meet up either maybe weekly or every other week, and that accountability is huge. And since we're on accountability, I better plug Better Me, right? Seems like
absolutely
a good segue.
You have to.
So if you haven't already heard me talk about Better Me a million times, I made a game. It's a personal development board game, and there are a lot of other ways you could describe it. It's definitely a relationship and friendship builder. You end up in some really interesting conversations when you play the game. But basically it is, if you took everything I just said about the mastermind group and put it into a board game, this would be the game. So it gets you thinking and talking about things that typically you don't on a day-to-day basis. People tend to talk about what they had for lunch, what they've been doing for the last week, the Super Bowl, all these kind of things. This game intentionally gets people talking about important things and asking themselves questions, learning from other people, and then making commitments. And a part of the game is if you make a commitment, you can earn a point for doing that in the game, but you have to have an accountability partner. And you tell them when you're going to accomplish this thing. It might be something you're going to do for a week, or you might say within the next month I will do this. That person has your contact information and will hold you accountable after the game. So that's the power of the follow-up after the game. So it's free. If you want to play it, you can go to bettermegame.com, and all you have to do is print off the game board and print off the player sheets that you write on, and then everything else is right there. The cards are online. There's even a random dice thing where you just click a button, and if you don't have a die at your house, you can roll the dice online. So there's all you need is print the board, print the player sheets, and you can play. And Liberty, I know you played it actually with my mom and a group there in Bellingham.
I did, yeah.
How would you describe it?
Oh, it's fantastic. And going back to what you said, most people tend to have somewhat superficial conversations. And this game really, really makes it kind of delve deeper and get into the heart of who you are and who the other person is, and face those issues that maybe you've been kind of trying to push to the back of your mind. And when your mom and I played, it was so great. We learned so much about each other and about ourselves as well. And not only that, the other women that were with us, you just open up about certain issues and situations in your life. And all of us were constantly taking notes and writing things down because each person was offering us suggestions or tips or advice on how to deal with what we were currently dealing with.
Cool.
And for me, one of the women that your mom brought, she offered up some really great advice for me on how to handle my debt from my divorce. And she gave me websites and those are things that her and I, if this woman and I had met on the street, we never would have talked about that ever. Right. So it was really great, and it was great to play with your mom, number one, just because her and I have that common bond, which is you, and we both love you and want to support you, and so to be able to play this amazing game that you have created was so fantastic. And
hopefully I said thank you back then, but if I didn't, thank you to both of you guys for hosting that game.
Yes.
Because every game that gets played, it introduces other people to it, and then, I'm blanking on her name right now. One of the ladies that played with you that day went off and hosted games with friends of hers, and one of them I actually knew, and I heard back from Myra that, hey, I played with, do you remember the names of everybody there? There was Susan, and who was the other lady?
Oh, gosh. I want to say Barbara or Karen. I know her and I have Facebook friends now.
I think it was Karen. Anyway, she went off, and because you guys hosted a game and she liked it, she played with her friends, and then I heard from Myra that she liked it. And one of the people who played as a result of the game that day, I don't know, she might want to be anonymous or whatever, but someone actually donated money to getting this game manufactured as a result of that game. So it just one thing leads to another, and people tend to keep in touch after they play this game because they actually get to know each other. And, it's that connection, which is one of our, most basic needs, is to connect with other people. And I actually talked to a lady the other day who she has a friend in Berlin. She's here in Chiang Mai, and her friend is single and would like to meet a great guy. And she said, I told my friend, and she wants to do this, she wants to host Better Me games because it tends to attract really great people. The people who are willing to play a game like this tend to be really awesome people. And she thinks she can meet a great guy by hosting Better Me games. I said, that's fantastic.
That's actually really awesome. And I think that I should do that here in Bellingham because, who wants to meet a guy at the bar?
Right.
I mean, I don't drink. I don't go to bars, so...
Yeah. And if you go to, not to pick on any one bar, but say you go to the Up and Up, that guy might be there because they have $2 pitchers, or maybe they're $3 an hour or whatever. But, that's the filter, right? Is like, the beer is cheaper here than the other bar, so that's why I'm here. And, I've hung out there plenty, so I'm not trying to be judgmental or whatever, the pot calling the kettle black. But the filter of people coming to play this game, as long as you can assume that they know anything about it, is they're there to improve themselves. And I've had people tell me the main reason they came wasn't because they wanted to play the game. It's because they figured that other people showing up would be really cool people. And a lot of my friends here in Chiang Mai that I've met in the year that I've been here, the first way I met them was because they came to this game that I made a Facebook event and put it out in a few Facebook groups, and they showed up, and so
Right.
So yeah, steal that idea. It's a great way to meet a guy.
I think I might. Yeah, that's something for you and I to talk about later.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear how that works.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just never occurred to me. People are coming up with uses for the thing that I just hadn't thought of. And even if you don't have the board printed out or any of that, the cards are free online too, and you can just play those while you're on a road trip on your smartphone or something. Just as a conversation starter, at a lot of pizza places and stuff, they'll have Trivial Pursuit cards just laying around while people are waiting for their pizza. They play. You don't even need to use the board, even though it's fun.
I think Major and I did that one time. My good friend Major, we just used the cards on my iPhone, and we didn't have the board or anything. We were just asking each other, the questions from the cards right on my phone.
Right.
And that was a great way to do it too.
Yeah. And so hopefully everybody listening doesn't feel like this is just a really long and painful commercial, because I believe in the game. And, honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves with a couple of my favorite podcasts is they have these 8 and 9 minute commercials, that just go on and on. But I'm not trying to sell you anything, because the game is free. And if you want to buy the boxed version, you can. But right now, honestly, I'm selling it at a break-even price, so I don't even care if you take the free one or buy one, whatever. I just want people playing it. I just want it to spread. That's the deal. Should we pull a card, Liberty?
Yeah, let's do it.
How about, I've got them up over here, so if you want to tell me the category, we've got mind, body, heart, people, tangibles. I can pull from any one of them, and there's a few cards they don't really make sense if you're not playing the game, but we'll just get to one that does. What category?
Let's do heart.
Heart. I like that one too. Heart. Okay, it's gratitude time. When you notice the clock reads 11:11, 10:10, 4:44, etc., use it as a reminder to think of what you're grateful for. It's an easy habit to form, and focusing on gratitude is one of the most proven paths to a more fulfilling life. All players are encouraged to say at least 3 things they're grateful for right now, and the player gets 1 point for drawing this card. If the clock strikes a, quote, gratitude time during the game, each player may say 3 things they're grateful for and receive 1 point.
All right.
So, should you start, or you want me to start?
Yeah, no, I'll start. 3 things that I'm grateful for. Gosh, how do you narrow it down to just 3? Number 1, I'm grateful for life. I am so happy to be alive and to be living the life that I am, because I truly love my life and I love the person I am. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for the things I have, mainly my apartment, my car. There's been times when I've slept in the back of a car or slept on people's couches, and it's nice to have my own little apartment and my car. So I'm very independent, which I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful for friends, good friends like you, Dan. I mean, friends that inspire me and encourage me and support me. I'm so grateful to have people like you in my life.
Awesome. Thank you. I notice on this card, when you go second, it's really hard to not just say all the same things the first person said. Okay, yeah. So
that's why I went first.
Yeah, exactly. So ditto everything you said. I feel the same. The friends is a really huge one, and I've only been over here in Chiang Mai for a year. I feel lucky that I've met really quality people over here, and that I'm able to keep in touch. So I guess one thing I'm grateful for is Skype, or even if it was just a regular phone line, the fact that we're on different sides of the planet, across the Pacific Ocean, and we can still talk and keep in touch. It wasn't that long ago that you would have had to send a letter on a boat, and maybe it would get there, and if it did, it might be a couple months later. Right. So that's awesome, that technology to keep in touch with friends who are far away. I'm also grateful when you mentioned your apartment. It made me think I also really like where I'm living, especially the balcony. I've got a big balcony here with a hammock out there, and it's sunny almost every day. I can go out and do whatever, play with the dog, practice juggling, things like that. So I'm really grateful that the place I'm living has some outdoor space like that. At night I can see the stars from the hammock and that sort of stuff. So That's one. And I'm also grateful to everyone who's helped with Better Me, with getting this game out there. People that have hosted games, told their friends, shared the link with people and all that sort of stuff. I've had a lot of help with it, and that's really cool, including you. So thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Yeah. And that's a habit I've formed. When I see the clock say 10:10 or 4:44, I know where that came from is, how a lot of people make a wish, or maybe not a lot, but some.
Right.
They say, oh, it's 10:10, make a wish. So it's 11:11, make a wish. I thought, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that, but I just kind of reworked it to be, what am I grateful for at those times? It's just a reminder. And, I usually see it at least once a day, so it's a good habit.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, right, when you were saying that, it's 11:11 p.m. here right now.
Oh,
it
yeah.
is.
Wow, yeah, it's 2:12 here. So, yeah, good. Well, I'll cheat and use your time zone. Should we pull another card?
Sure.
All right, let's do one more.
Choose.
What category do you like? Okay. I'm going to choose mind.
Good one.
Oh, this one doesn't work for a podcast. It's take 1 minute to write down everything you see that is black.
Oh, okay.
Those are really fun, but I'll choose a different one. Okay, if you're worried about something, ask yourself this. Will it matter in a month, a year, 5 years? If the answer is no, then why worry now? And if the answer is yes, is there something you can do to change it? 1 point for drawing this card. Any player is welcome to share. All right. If you're worried about something, ask yourself if it will matter in a month, a year, or 5 years.
Well, I have a pretty good example.
Go for it.
It kind of comes in a roundabout way. Before I went to Japan, of course my life was consumed by everyday, little petty issues. Is the power bill paid on time? My mother-in-law doesn't like me, which she loved me, but, just little things like that. Not being late to work, important things, but also things that really aren't going to matter in a month, like you said.
Yeah.
And then when it's easy to get stressed out over those things. And when I went to Japan and was working at the Cove and witnessing the dolphin slaughter every day, the way it affected me was interesting and definitely changed my life. But just watching mass scale death on a daily basis really put my life into perspective for me and made me realize that, who cares if the power bill is a day late or if you're a minute late to work? It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true when something like that can really give you perspective.
Right.
Those memes that you see, the first world problems. Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember one of them where it was a picture of a lady laying on her side on her bed looking at her phone, and it was something about, like, why does the phone always have to, like, I'm trying to think of how it was worded. It was basically she was laying on her side trying to look at the phone, and it kept automatically orienting, like, vertically, So she's like, I can't lay on my side on my bed and read my smartphone,
God.
Yeah, so many little problems like that just aren't problems, but
right.
Yeah. It makes me think back about, it's more than 5 years now, but maybe 7 years ago, I had a big, real estate project go bad. And, financially, it was the worst experience I've had. I went from, all this money in the bank, and at that time, I could have moved to Thailand and lived here for probably, more than 10 years, maybe 15 years off of the money that I had in the bank, and just hung out and taken a lot of naps. But instead, I poured all my cash into one real estate project. And not only that, but I got my parents involved in it. And it was the biggest deal I'd ever done. And to that point, I'd only lost money on one or two, and small amounts of money on a couple real estate projects. And most of them had gone well and made money, and some of them made some pretty good chunks of money. So I bet big, and it went bad, and I lost all my cash. I lost a lot of my mom's cash, and it hurt my credit rating and both of my parents' credit ratings. And so I felt really responsible. And, it would have been bad enough if it was just me, but I felt, really, I guess, guilty and ashamed, and I didn't really want everybody to know about it, and so I kind of kept a lid on it for a while before I would even mention it. And so at the time, it was super stressful, and it stressed my mom out a lot. So that was more stressful to me actually than what I was going through, because I was 28 years old or something, and I knew I'd have plenty of time to recover, but this was her retirement money and blah 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 blah. Long story short, I started to look at it that the worst case scenario is I go sleep on a friend's couch, like you mentioned. My mom still had a retirement income. She was a teacher for a long time, so they get a pension, and Social Security was just around the corner for her. And it was, when I really quantified it, it wasn't quite as bad as I sort of imagined it to be in the beginning. And really the worst part of it to me was that feeling of shame and guilt. And once I kind of got over that and talked about it openly, some of that evaporated.
Wow.
And now here I am having a great time, living as well as I ever have. So,
wow. See, that's
anyway.
something I didn't know about you.
Yeah. I really didn't talk about that much for a long time.
Yeah.
And actually, my mom, we never really discussed it, but I sort of assumed she wasn't going to tell people all the details of that.
Right.
And then one day she mentioned to me that she had been talking to my aunts and uncles, and she told them about it. And I was like, oh, man, I didn't want them to know about it, because here I was, their nephew who lost all my mom's money.
Right.
It was embarrassing, and I was worried about how they were going to think of me after that, and da-da-da-da-da. But that's a whole nother topic, worrying about what other people think.
Right.
Yeah. So there you can see what the game does. It gets you into some pretty cool conversations. You learn things about each other.
Yeah.
So is there anything I didn't cover that you wanted to cover? I've got my notes here. I've got them mostly checked off.
Yeah. I think that's all we had talked about covering initially.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you being on. I know it's kind of late there too, and we had all the technical issues. You were very patient with that.
Yeah. Are you kidding? I'm happy to talk to you, and, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. That means a lot to me.
Absolutely. And one more time, if you want to go kayaking with Liberty, the name of the outfit again
is San Juan Kayak Expeditions out of Friday Harbor, Washington.
Book that up. You definitely won't regret it. It's a beautiful part of the world. Liberty's an awesome person to hang out with, and I'm sure the whales, I've never seen them from a kayak. I've seen them from a little Boston whaler, and I felt small enough. I felt like they could sneeze and flip us upside down,
Yeah.
But, I can't imagine in a kayak it would be just awesome.
Yeah, I kayaked with them up in Alaska, and it's scary and incredible.
Yep. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Cool. Of course, check out odonlife.com for this episode and all the other episodes of this podcast. And again, if you want to check out the game Better Me, it's bettermegame.com, and you can play for free. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Big thank you, Liberty, to you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was really good to catch up with you as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, everybody, have a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.